one of the things that revolutionary movements have to offer young people is a sense of romantic adventure. I mean, if you're working at 7-Eleven in a dead-end job and you're offered an adventure, the chance to demonstrate dramatically for a messianic cause, especially if you're young, that's going to call to something deep inside you and excite you, because everyone needs a higher purpose, and that longing can be addressed by romantically inclined ideologues, but there are better ways of addressing that longing, I believe, and there's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's a tremendous adventure in that. It's a demanding ethical striving, and it's a form of responsibility to pay attention to what you say and to only say things that you believe to be true. And there's insane adventure in that, because you have no idea what's going to happen if you do that. You entice people into adopting ethical responsibility by pointing out to them in story, and perhaps to the degree you're capable by example, that there isn't anything more interesting or meaningful that they could possibly do. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. And I think that's part of the reason that my books and lectures have proved popular. I'm making a case for some things, I suppose, that you might regard as obvious, at least when viewed from a certain perspective. When I was talking to large live audiences, I noted that one topic in particular would bring the audience to a dead silent halt constantly, and that was when I made a rhetorical case for the relationship between responsibility and meaning. And you need a meaning in life. You need a purpose to sustain you through the catastrophe of life, through the suffering of life. You need a meaning. It's not optional. And the deeper the meaning, the better. And it's definitely the case that people find that meaning primarily in the adoption of responsibility. And that case isn't being made well in our culture, especially not to young people. There's a hunger, a mass hunger for that idea. It's better than happiness, that meaning. It's deeper than happiness. Happiness is fleeting. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. Of heavy responsibility, that's sustaining through good times and bad. It's always the case that the best story wins.
One way of conceptualizing yourself is that you're one speck of dust among 7 billion. And when you conceptualize yourself that way, you might think, well, what difference does it make what I say or do? And that's actually quite convenient for you, because if it doesn't matter what you say or do, then you don't have any responsibility and you can do whatever you want. The price you pay for that is a bit of nihilism, but if you don't have to shoulder any responsibility, that's a small price to pay. The other way of looking at it, and this is actually the accurate way of looking at it, is that you're in a network. that information propagates in a network manner. So don't underestimate the power of your speech. Don't underestimate the power of truth. There's nothing more powerful. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Now, in order to speak what you might regard as the truth, you have to let go of the outcome. You have to think, I'm going to say what I think. Stupid as I am, biased as I am, ignorant as I am, I'm going to state what I think as clearly as I can, and I'm going to live with the consequences no matter what they are. Now, the reason you think that's an element of faith. The idea is that nothing brings a better world into being than the stated truth. Now, you might have to pay a price for that, but that's fine. You're going to pay a price for every bloody thing you do and everything you don't do. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You get to choose which poison you're going to take. That's it. So if you're going to stand up for something, stand up for your truth. It'll shape you because people will respond and object and tell you why you're a fool and a biased moron, why you're ignorant. And then if you listen to them, you'll be just that much less like that the next time you say something. And if you do that for 5 years, you'll be so damn tough and articulate and able to communicate and withstand pressure that you won't even recognize yourself. And then you'll be a force to contend with. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. It's almost impossible to provide people with enough protection so that they feel safe to speak. Okay, so we'll address that directly. It is not safe to speak, and it never will be. The thing you gotta keep in mind is that it's even less safe not to speak, right? It's a balance of risk. You wanna pay the price for being who you are, for stating your mode of being in the world, or do you wanna pay the price for being a bloody serf, a one that's enslaved him or herself? Well, that's a major price, man. That thing unfolds over decades, and you'll just be a miserable worm at the end of about 20 years of that. No self-respect, no power, no ability to voice your opinions, nothing left but resentment because everyone's against you. It's like, say what you think carefully. Pay attention to your words. Say what you think carefully. Pay attention to your words. It's a price you want to pay if you are willing to believe that truth is the cornerstone of society. In the most real sense. If you're willing to take that leap, then tell the truth and see what happens. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Nothing better could possibly happen to you. There'll be ups and downs, and there'll be pushback, and there'll be controversy and all of that, but it doesn't matter. The truth is what redeems the world from hell. And that's the truth. And we saw plenty of hell over the last 100 years, you know, and we haven't learned a bloody thing from it. It's like, wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
Why would I put my job on the line to have an opinion? I know why. Because the ability to speak your truth is the bulwark against hell. And losing your job? That's nothing. That's nothing compared to where things can go when they go badly. For me, it was just preventative. It's like, this isn't going in a good direction. Well, should you take a risk? It's like, you don't have that choice. You're silent? That's a risk. Now, most people don't understand the risks of silence. I happen to understand the risks of silence because I've been studying them for 40 years. It's my language. I'll take responsibility for what I say. I am not saying your words. It's my language. I'll take responsibility for what I say. I am not saying your words. I know where corruption of speech leads. And I'm not going there. And one of the things I tried to learn when I was taking apart what happened in Auschwitz and trying to put myself in the position of an Auschwitz camp guard, which, by the way, you can do if you use your imagination a bit. I wouldn't call it exactly the world's most pleasant meditative experience. You can conjure that part of yourself up if you want, and that'll teach you something about what you're like. People don't do it because it's too frightening. But I know perfectly well that I could do that sort of thing. And so once I learned that I could do that sort of thing, and maybe that I could even enjoy it, I thought, okay, fine, I get it. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to live so that if that opportunity was presented to me, I wouldn't take it. It's my language. I'll take responsibility for what I say. I am not saying your words. It's my language. I'll take responsibility for what I say. I am not saying your words. And I think that's the lesson that people need to learn from the 20th century. That's what human beings did, okay? Well, we're all human, okay? So how is it that we should live so that we don't do that again? Well, part of that is to try to say the truth. Part of that is to try to say the truth. No matter what. Because the alternative is worse. And it is worse. It's my language. I'll take responsibility for what I say. I am not saying your words. It's my language. I'll take responsibility for what I say. I am not saying your words. Most of it's illusion.
said what I had to say. I'm sure that I could have done it better, and many people have told me how I could have done it better, although it didn't mean they would actually do it. And you know, my job was at risk, serious risk, for about 2 months, and it destabilized my family. Being very brave about this, so like, thumbs up to them, man. Here's the optimistic news. The university has left me alone completely. I shook hands with the dean 2 weeks ago. We're on friendly terms. They don't want this to go any farther than it has already. The students were tremendously welcoming when I came back to teach in January. I haven't had a single negative incident at the university, and I've received thousands of letters from people all over the world, all of which have been in support. I've received 2 negative letters. That's it. 2. People have an inchoate longing to have the sort of thing that we're talking about articulated, and so don't be thinking you're alone. It's just that people can't talk, they're afraid to talk, or they don't know what to say, and those are real problems. So if you're reasonably articulate, like, start talking, sharpen yourself up. I mean, the enemy is a cloud. They're a cloud of gnats. They're only courageous in groups. They're only courageous in mobs. If you stand your ground and don't apologize and articulate things properly, they'll disperse around you like they're not even there. Most of it's illusion. Most of it's illusion. Be afraid of the right thing, and the right thing you should be afraid of is not saying what you say, because that's the same as not being. And here you are suffering away. You might as well be at the same time. At least then there's something to you.
I'm dead serious about this. It's like, sort yourself out.
Sort yourself out before you try to figure out the world, and that's the primary objective.
Yep.
That's your most important thing that you can do. Sort yourself out.
Sort yourself out, and marshal your arguments and put yourself in order so that when someone pushes you a little farther than you should go, you can say no. You can say no. When someone pushes you a little farther than you should go, you can say no. You can say no. Here's some fundamental rules about the shadow that you might think about as you move forward through your life. So a lot of times you're going to have to negotiate on your own behalf. You should be able to stand up for yourself at least as well as you would stand up for someone that you care for. The problem with the idea of being nice to other people is that it doesn't take you into account. The fundamental rule is that you should certainly include yourself in the circle of people who deserve respect and care, and that means that you have to be willing to advocate for yourself. And if you're willing to advocate for yourself and you want to do it, you have to be able to say no. You have to, because otherwise you have to say yes, and then you can't negotiate. You can say no. You can say no. When someone pushes you a little farther than you should go, you can say no. You can say no. And in order to say no, you have to have armed yourself with strategies and plans that enable you to say no. You can't be dependent. You have to be willing to stand your ground. There's not much evidence that sorts of atrocities that characterized the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany were the result of a few extremely corrupt people at the top of the hierarchy forcing everyone into slavery and then making them do terrible things. I think that's a very weak explanation. And when you look at human capacity for destructiveness, if you don't regard yourself as one of the agents of that destructiveness, or at least one of the potential agents, then from the Union perspective at least, there's a high probability that you're part of the problem.
You can say no. You can say no. When someone pushes you a little farther than you should go, you can say no. You can say no.
If you familiarize yourself with the realm of human capability and then you regard yourself as human, what that means is that you have to regard yourself as a creature that's capable of what human beings are capable of. And human beings are capable of a lot of things. And some of them are absolutely wonderful. I mean, there's nothing more remarkable than a human being on the planet. People can do amazing things, but the downside of that is that we can do absolutely horrible things, and it's not obvious that it's only the pathological people who do that. In fact, it's not reasonable to assume that.
You can say no. You can say no. When someone pushes you a little farther than you should go, you can say no. You can say no.
New Age thinkers tell you things like follow your bliss and you'll encounter utopia, but that isn't what the Jungians, especially Jung, said about his process of individuation at all. He said that if you follow what's meaningful and you do it honestly, it will take you somewhere you really do not want to go. And until you go there, you'll never be able to climb up higher on the other side.
How old was I when everything you understood started to come together?
Akira.
I think that really started happening to me. It started probably happening to me when I was in my early 20s. I realized at about that age that almost everything I said was a falsehood of one form or another. I was using language instrumentally in order to win arguments or to attain dominance, indicate that I was intelligent, or to use it for victory, for narrow, local, personal victory. And I realized that when I was in my early 20s, and I started to, because a voice, in some sense, a voice started inside my head, which I now regard as something equivalent to the cricket in Pinocchio.
The voice that gets you up, that makes you buck. The voice that gets you up.
The voice
that gets you up, that makes you buck.
And continually informed me that the things I was saying weren't, in some fundamental sense, weren't true. And it was very disquieting because the voice that was commenting on what I was saying was making comments of that sort. I wouldn't call them disparaging. It was more just a matter-of-fact commentary. But I was saying it about 95% of what I was saying. And I thought, well, that's a strange conundrum, because now I don't know if I'm the voice that's criticizing what I'm saying or if I'm the thing that's saying what's being criticized. How do you figure that out? But I
decided that I would take a chance and assumed that the part that was suggesting that I wasn't saying things truthfully was accurate, and I started to practice only saying things that voice wouldn't object to.
The voice that gets you up, that makes you buck. The voice that gets you up.
The voice.
The voice that gets you up, that makes you buck. The voice that gets you up.
And I think that's also equivalent to some degree to trying to say only those things that make you strong instead of weak, or that do not fill you with a post-speech sense of shame and regret.
So I'm going to tell you today about a way of looking at the world that I think is substantially different from the way that most people look at the world. The standard scientific view of the world, of course, is that it's made up of familiar objects, and that the world is in essence a material place. But there's some very potent limitations of that viewpoint, despite the fact that it's given us tremendous power. And the limitations are essentially as follows. The essential materialist view can't tell us anything about consciousness, which is probably the primary fact of experience. The essential materialist view can't tell us anything about consciousness, which is probably the primary fact of experience. Neuroscientists in recent years, mostly in the last decade, have been trying to crack the problem of consciousness, and they have absolutely made no progress. Not only do neuroscientists understand virtually nothing about consciousness, they can't even really figure out what its function is. They can't understand why our brains would go to so much effort to make us aware of things when it isn't clear at all that awareness is necessary for life, especially given that there are many life forms on the planet that don't seem to be aware at all. The essential materialist view can't tell us anything about consciousness, which is probably the primary fact of experience. The essential materialist view can't tell us anything about consciousness, which is probably the primary fact of experience. The standard materialist view is also insufficient in many other ways. It's insufficient philosophically, I think, as you probably all know, because a conception that portrays the world as made up of objects is in some really fundamental way dead. Right? It doesn't seem to have a place in it for human beings, or a place in it for meaning, or a mode whereby you might be able to conceptualize the real existence of something like an emotion, or a dream, or a motivation. All phenomena which are just as mysterious to neuroscientists and to scientists in general as consciousness. Now, the problem with this seems to be mostly experiential. If you have to ask people what they know more than anything else, they know, number one, that they're conscious. They know, number two, that their internal experiential life is composed of emotions and motivational states, which, although not rational in essential structure, are so real and relevant that virtually everything that people do is predicated on them. The essential materialist view can't tell us anything about consciousness, which is probably the primary fact viewpoint, despite its ability to give us tremendous technological power, seems to eradicate from formal consideration many, many essential experiences that are vital to life, in fact, even perhaps primary. I'm going to suggest to you today that there's an alternative viewpoint, and I think also it's one that, although you may be hearing about it formally for the first time, is also something that you know unbelievably deeply.
Unbelievably deeply. Unbelievably deeply. Unbelievably deeply.
Thousands of years ago, Plato proposed that all knowledge was remembering. And of course, we don't believe that today because we believe we gather knowledge as a consequence of contact with the world. But you'll see today that the knowledge that I'm going to share with you will strike a deep chord of remembering, and it's because everything that you've done throughout your life is in one way or another predicated on what I'm going to tell you today. I'm going to demonstrate this in a peculiar way, I think, because I'm going to start by telling you a story. And the reason I'm going to do that is because models of the world that include phenomena like consciousness and emotions and motivations and actions and interaction are generally portrayed formally in stories and not in scientific theories. And it does turn out to be that stories themselves have an identifiable structure, even a grammar that makes them comprehensible. Furthermore, it turns out that even the simplest stories, especially if they're elegantly constructed, have an unbelievably profound underlying meaning. Underlying meaning. Unbelievably profound underlying meaning. And you can frequently see this most particularly in children's stories. I remember I showed my son when he was 4 years old the Disney movie Pinocchio, which on the surface of it is a very strange tale, right? It's a wooden puppet who wants to become real, so he has to rescue his father from the belly of a whale.
Whale or no whale, I've got to find my father and rescue him. I've got to go to him, Jiminy. Goodbye.
Pinocchio is a deep, deep story.
Father, I'm gonna save you.
It has echoes that go back 3,000 or 4,000 years to the earliest stories that we know. And it's so rich with information that a child can watch it over and over and over and over. I think my son watched Pinocchio 30 times. Why? Well, it's either because a child can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality, or it's because there's something to those stories that's much more potent than we actually consciously understand. You find that in the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time are 4 Disney movies that are animated fairy tales, essentially retelling of mythological stories. They strike a deep chord. Why?
Why?
Underlying meaning. Underlying meaning. Unbelievably profound underlying meaning. Shakespeare, who's of course a great literary figure, said it perhaps better than anyone else has, which is not surprising because he said many things better than anyone else has. He said all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. And so following from that story is no more about the props in the world than a play that you go see is about the props on the stage. A drama is about the manner in which people actually exist, the emotions that they feel, the motivational states they encounter, the problems they have to solve when they interact with each other. And the play's the thing from that particular perspective in which we can capture those aspects of our experience that are not only real, but essentially human. Essentially human. Underlying meaning. Underlying meaning. Unbelievably profound. Underlying meaning.
They have the exits and the entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts.
I'm going to tell you a little story to begin this off with. It's a kid's story written for children of about 4 years of age, but it's very, very elegant.
There's no such thing as a dragon. There's no such thing as a dragon. There's no such thing as a dragon. There's no such thing as a dragon.
Well, we all know that dragon is a fictitious creature. Reptilian, terrible, lives forever, breathes fire, hoards gold. Strange combination of attributes. Why would something terrible and ancient hold a treasure?
There's no such thing as a dragon. There's no such thing as a dragon. There's no such thing as a dragon. There's no such thing as a dragon.
Billy Bixby was rather surprised when he woke up one morning and found a dragon in his room. It was a small dragon about the size of a kitten. The dragon wagged its tail happily when Billy patted its head. It's interesting, in Chinese mythology, dragon is a positive figure. In European mythology, the dragon is something to face in combat and destroy. Billy went downstairs to tell his mother. There's no such thing as a dragon, said Billy's mother. And she said it like she meant it.
There's no such thing as a dragon. There's no such thing as a dragon. There's no such thing as a dragon. There's no such thing as a
Remember once my daughter had a nightmare. She was about 4. This was at the time when she first started to notice graffiti and litter. Both graffiti and litter bothered her. She couldn't understand the motivations behind the graffiti artist, and she didn't like the fact that there was litter cluttering up the world's order. Children are really, really dependent on order, and the reason for that is that their realm of competence is rather restricted, so they don't like to see things messed up. She came into our bedroom one night and said, "Dad, I had a nightmare." Now, we all know, right? Nightmares aren't real, just like dragons. Dreams aren't real. Of course, which raises the question of why in the world you'd bother having them 6 or 7 hours a night every single day of your life. She said, I dreamt that there was a clear flowing stream, but in the stream there was all sorts of garbage. And it scared me and bothered me so much I woke up. So I told her, look, close your eyes and imagine the stream. It's full of garbage. What should you do about it? She said, well, I should take the garbage out of the stream. I said, all right, so picture the stream, picture yourself cleaning the garbage out of it. She calmed down and went back to sleep. Why? Well, because dreams concentrate on threat. We know that. They present threats to you, threats you haven't been able to deal with well. There's a part of your brain that tracks threats, and it's not all that smart in some ways. All it does is say, look, here's the problem. And it's waiting for the rest of your brain to conjure up some solution to that problem. And if it doesn't conjure up a solution, then it just presents the problem over and over and over and over and over. So people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, who've been really upset by their contact with something unexpected, dream about the same tragedy forever until they solve it. And they solve it by facing it and living it over and over, voluntarily. There's no such thing as a dragon. Over and over, voluntarily. There's no such thing as a dragon. Over and over, voluntarily. There's no such thing as a dragon. Over and over, voluntarily. There's no such thing as a dragon. Over and over, voluntarily. So you see, Billy, he's pretty much got it right off the bat, right? The dragon wagged its tail happily when Billy patted its head. Billy went downstairs to tell his mother. There's no such thing as a dragon, said Billy's mother, and she said it like she meant it. There's no such thing as a dragon, said Billy's mother, and she said it like she meant it. There's no such thing as a dragon. 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 Now the next thing you might wonder is, how often have you actually gone into a house where there's a dragon? You've all encountered dozens of houses that were filled right to the rafters with various dragons, all of which were being studiously ignored by the people who inhabited the house. Billy went back to his room and began to dress. The dragon came close to Billy in a friendly manner and wagged its tail, but Billy didn't pat it. If there's no such thing as something, it's silly to pat it on the head. Billy washed his face and hands and went down to breakfast. The dragon went along. It was bigger now, almost the size of a dog. Billy sat down at the table. The dragon sat down on the table. This sort of thing was not usually permitted, but there wasn't much Billy's mother could do about it. She'd already said there's no such thing as a dragon. 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 And if there's no such thing, you can't tell it to get down off the table. Mother made some pancakes for Billy, but the dragon ate them all. Mother made some more, but the dragon ate those too. Mother kept making pancakes until she ran out of batter. Billy only got one of them, but he said that's all he really wanted anyway. One time, an acquaintance of ours brought their son over to be babysat at our house. His nanny had just been in a car accident, so he was being shunted from house to house while his parents went off to work. He didn't have a very good reputation, this kid. He was about 4. He came over to our house and his mother in the morning, and she dropped him off and she said, well, he probably won't eat all day, but that's all right. And I thought, no, if he's 4, if he doesn't eat all day, that's not all right. It isn't all right that he doesn't eat.
So then you think, well, maybe there's some sort of dragon associated with this child. There's no such thing as a dragon. 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 So I came back at noon. My wife had taken care of the children. Other kids were playing in the living room. And he was standing in the porch, sort of in the corner, wandering around back and forth. And I looked at him and I thought, that's not so good. So I kind of poked him. I was poking him, trying to get him to play. And he had this mask of a face on, unhappy. And I'd poke him and he'd kind of jerk away and all that. I couldn't get him to smile. I couldn't get him to play. And I thought, that's not good. That's not good. He's 4. Like, he should have, acted unhappy for 2 or 3 pokes and then kind of laughed and then we would kind of get into it. So then we had lunch. All the kids were at the table and they were eating and he wasn't eating, and so she was trying to feed him. And so we were watching him very carefully, and she'd bring up the spoon to his mouth and he'd move his head back and forth, to refuse it. About a 9-month-old would do that. That's their first trick. Something happened when he was 9 months old and he never really got beyond that. My wife was fairly persistent with the spoon, and he'd get annoyed and, squawk a bit. She'd put some food in and then he'd swallow it. And then as soon as he took a little bit of food, she'd pat him and tell him that he was being a good kid. And she meant it. It was not a game. Like, she was really intent on getting this kid to have lunch. What was cool, as she kept patting him on the head and telling him he was a good kid, he was opening his mouth more often, even though he was still moving his head back and forth. It took about 10 minutes or so, and she'd fed him the whole bowl of chicken stew. And she showed him, she said, look, you're a good boy, you ate all of it. Look, you're a good boy, you ate all of it. That horrible mask that he was wearing, that mask of unhappiness, it just fell off him. And he had this great smile. It was just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, because you could see that was the first damn thing that he'd been allowed to succeed at. There's no such thing as a dragon. 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 Followed my wife around like a puppy dog. Like, he was one step behind her, and then we went downstairs into the basement and we were watching TV, and he climbed up in her lap and he grabbed onto her, just wrapped around her, And then his mother came home and she came downstairs and she took one look at this kid wrapped around my wife and she said, "Oh, super mom." Grabbed him, walked out, and I thought, that was a horrible thing to see. One day with that kid, you'd fix him up. It was one positive experience was enough to bring him out of his shell. It's okay that he doesn't eat. It's okay that he stands in the corner and doesn't play with the other kids. It's okay that he's miserable and unhappy. It's like, hey, guess what? That's not okay. It's not even a little bit okay. By the time Billy came back downstairs, the dragon had grown so much he filled the hall. Billy had to go around by way of the living room to get to where his mother was. "I didn't know dragons grew so fast," said Billy. "There's no such thing as a dragon," said Mother firmly.
There ain't no such thing. There ain't no such thing as a dragon.
Cleaning the downstairs took Mother all morning. What with the dragon in the way and having to climb in and out of windows to get from room to room. By noon, the dragon filled the house. Its head hung out the front door, its tail hung out the back door, and there wasn't a room in the house that didn't have some part of the dragon in it. When the dragon awoke from his nap, he was hungry. The bakery truck went by. The smell of fresh bread was more than the dragon could resist. He ran down the street after the bakery truck. The house went along, of course, like the shell on a snail. When Mr. Bixby came home for lunch, the first thing he noticed was that his house was gone. Luckily, one of the neighbors was able to tell him which way it went. Mr. Bixby got in his car and went looking for the house. He studied all the houses as he drove along. Finally, he saw one that looked familiar. Billy and Mrs. Bixby were waving from an upstairs window. Mr. Bixby climbed over the dragon's head onto the porch roof and through the upstairs window. "How did this happen?" Mr. Bixby asked. "It was the dragon," said Billy. "There's no such thing," Mother started to say.
There ain't no such thing. There ain't no such thing as a dragon. There ain't no such thing. There ain't no such thing as a dragon.
"There is a dragon," Billy insisted, "a very big dragon." And Billy patted the dragon on the head. The dragon wagged its tail happily. Then, even faster than it had grown, the dragon started getting smaller. Soon it was kitten size again. "I don't mind dragons this size," said Mother. "Why did it have to grow so big?" "I'm not sure," said Billy. "I think it just wanted to be noticed."
There ain't no such thing. There ain't no such thing as a dragon. There ain't no such thing. There ain't no such thing as a dragon.
Akira, 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 Akira.
Alexander Solzhenitsyn, you may or may not know, was a prisoner in the Soviet Gulag concentration camp system that, by his report at least, killed 60 million people. Solzhenitsyn, he had a pretty nasty life. I mean, first of all, he's on the Russian front, which was a nasty place to be. Then he was captured by the Germans, and they didn't like Russians, so they put them in separate prisoners of war camps. partly because Stalin, who was the consummate paranoid, wouldn't sign the Geneva Convention on the treatment of prisoners of war. So the Germans set up extra POW camps for the Russians, and they starved generally so badly that if other POWs were in the vicinity, they'd throw food packages over the wire, even though they themselves weren't particularly well fed. So the war ends and the Russians win, and Solzhenitsyn goes back to Russia, right? And what happens? He's thinking, wow, this is over. We helped defend the fatherland. We're going to get, if not a hero's welcome, at least some welcome. But Stalin figured, no. These Russians who'd been to the West, they were contaminated by their exposure to the Western economic system. And as a consequence of that, they posed a threat to the integrity of the Soviet state, so he just threw them all in concentration camps. So fine. So Solzhenitsyn's sitting there in this concentration camp on a coal pile which contained this kind of clay that his compatriots would eat because they were so damn hungry that it was better to have the clay in their stomach than nothing at all. And he thought, all right, what the hell did I do to get here? What the hell did I do to get here?
What did I do to get here?
What the hell did I do to get here?
What the hell did I do to get here?
Which is really a remarkable thing to think, right? Because there was the Second World War, and that probably couldn't be pinned directly on him. And then there's Stalin, who was, really one of the world's worst monsters. And then there's the concentration camp, the POW camp. A lot of things happened to Solzhenitsyn, but he said he had nothing but time to think in this concentration camp, and he wasn't really that happy with the way things turned out. So he made a vow in the camp, and the vow was this, that he's gonna go back over his whole life, right from day one, and try to remember every time he ever did something he thought was wrong. He thought, right? Not someone else, but that gave his conscience a pang. And he said, well, since I don't have anything better to do, I'm going to spend the next 10 years seeing if I can undo all those little knots in my soul that I tied. And the consequence of that was that he wrote a book called The Gulag Archipelago. 3-volume book, 1,900 pages long. He memorized it because there wasn't any paper and pencil available for him in prison. And then it circulated in the underground in the Soviet Union for years before it got published in the West, published in 1975. Definitely one of the literary events that brought down the Soviet Union. Definitely. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Think this one guy, right, got numbers tattooed on his arm, he's skinny as a rail, he's 3/4 dead, he's been beat to death in 15 different ways. He decides under completely unreasonable circumstances that he's going to take personal responsibility for the position that he happens to find himself in. The consequence of that 25 years later is that Solzhenitsyn is still around, but the Soviet Union isn't. What the hell did I do to get here?
What did I do to get here?
What the hell did I do to get here?
What the hell did I do to get here?
Be the way the world works. Now, can it? But then you think this too, do we really know how the world works? We've had a pretty nasty century in the last 100 years, right? We had the Nazis, we had Mao Zedong, we had the recent tragedies in Africa. We don't seem to learn anything about genocide. Someone like Solzhenitsyn says, well, might be your fault. Might be your fault. Why? What are you ignoring? Good question. Can you make peace with your own family? It's not so easy, right? It's probably no easier than making peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
What do we encounter when we encounter something we don't understand? Something we don't understand. Something we don't understand. What do we encounter when we encounter something we don't understand? We don't know. What do we encounter when we encounter something we don't understand? Something we don't understand. Something we don't understand. What do we encounter when we encounter something we don't understand? We don't know.
It's not the simple world of objects. The world of objects is something we've learned to see. The real world is way more complicated than what we just see. What do you encounter when you encounter something unexpected? Well, when you first encounter it, you don't know. All you know is that it frightens you, but it makes you curious. Think dragons, right? Every primate's afraid of lizards, including us. Chimpanzees don't like snakes. If you take a chimp that's never seen a snake, show it the snake, it will hit the roof of its cage, then it'll look at the snake. Why would a dragon hoard gold? Because a dragon represents everything that you're afraid of. What's embedded in everything that you're afraid of? Absolutely everything that you need to find. Run from what you're afraid of? Run from exactly what you need to find.
What do we encounter when we encounter something we don't understand? Something we don't understand. Something we don't understand. What do we encounter when we encounter something we don't understand? We don't know. What do we encounter when we encounter something we don't understand? Something we don't understand. Something we don't understand. What do we encounter when we encounter something we don't understand? We don't know.
There is only one way to salvation, and that is to make yourself responsible for all men's sins. As soon as you make yourself responsible in all sincerity for everything and for everyone, you will see at once that this is really so, and that you are in fact to blame for everyone and for all things.
Dostoevsky, I think, said something like, every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. It's a crazy statement, right? It's a crazy statement, and he was a pretty extreme person in many, many ways. But there's a level at which that's metaphysically true. You know, because what happens is that it's failure to act often that's the most catastrophic. It's to not do the right thing when the situation presents itself. It's very specific. you're constantly in situations where you could do the right thing if you were willing to take a risk that's actually of relatively moderate size. And you know that you can take the risk, and you know that you should take the risk, and you don't. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. What happens is the thing that they didn't oppose grows a little bit, and they shrink a little bit, and that starts a loop, hey? And so, and you say, well, how do you take responsibility for the world? And the answer is, well, you also have to do it with a certain degree of humility, because what do you know?
One of the things that has blown me away in the last year, a large proportion of my audience has been young men, and
Akira.
I've spoken to them a lot about responsibility.
People are starving for the antidote. And the antidote is truth and responsibility. Truth and responsibility. Truth and responsibility. People are starving for the antidote. And the antidote is truth and responsibility. That's the secret to a meaningful life. Without the meaningful life, all you have is suffering. What's so odd about this is that of all the things that I've spoken about, because I can see the audience and I can feel how the audience is reacting, because I'm always paying attention to all of you, I get some sense of how what I'm saying is landing. What happens is if I talk about responsibilities, everyone is silent. Silent and not moving, focusing, attentive. Pick up your responsibility. Pick up the heaviest thing you can and carry it. And the room goes quiet and everybody's eyes open, and I think, well, who's makes me break up? People are starving for the antidote. And the antidote is truth and responsibility. Truth and responsibility. Truth and responsibility. People are starving for the antidote. And the antidote is truth and responsibility. That's the secret to a meaningful life. Without the meaningful life, all you have is suffering. I don't know why. I don't really understand it. There's something about it that's so crucial, because we've been fed this unending diet of rights and freedoms, and there's something about that that's so pathologically wrong. People are starving for the antidote, and the antidote is truth and responsibility. That's the secret to a meaningful life, and without the meaningful life, all you have is suffering and nihilism and despair and all of that, self-contempt, and that's not good, and it's necessary for men to stand up and take responsibility, and they all know that and are starving for that message. And the message is more that that's also a good thing to stand up and take responsibility, because you're cursed so much now from when you're young with this notion that your active engagement with the world is part of what is destroying and undermining the planet and adding to the tyranny of the social system. It's like, how about not so much of that? Hey, it's too soul deadening. It's anti-human right to the core. My sense instead is that if you were able to reveal the best of yourself to you in the world, that you would be an overwhelming force for good. People are starving for the antidote. And the antidote is truth and responsibility. Truth and responsibility. Truth and responsibility. People are starving for the antidote. And the antidote is truth and responsibility. That's the secret to a meaningful life. Without the meaningful life, all you have is suffering. St. George and the Dragon. Dragon lives in the ground, chased there by heroes of a previous generation, now and then re-emerging. Kills people, right? These are skulls around its lair. Threatens the integrity of the community, like everything unexpected does. Hero comes out, slays the dragon, frees the treasure. Dragons hoard gold because the thing you most need is always to be found where you least want to look. This is a dream my 5-year-old nephew had. Now, you gotta get the context of this dream, right? Year after this dream, parents were divorced, so there were dragons in the house. He was about 4 at this time. He was running around the house with this little plastic knight helmet on and a sword. He was zipping around killing things with it. Doing this all the time. And even when he went to sleep at night, he'd put the sword by his pillow, knight helmet on his pillow. Now, every night, or every second night, or every third night for 6 months, he'd been waking up screaming. So I was there one one night when he woke up screaming. Next morning I said, well, did you dream anything? And so he launched into this story. He said he was in this field and these little creatures, like dwarves, were coming up to him and they didn't have any arms, they just had legs. They had big beaks and they were covered with hair and grease, and on top of their head was a cross. And there's lots and lots of these dwarves, and they were jumping on him with their beaks, biting him. We all looked at him and thought, well, it's no wonder you're waking up screaming, right? I mean, that doesn't sound so good. And then he said, well, wait, there's more, right? Back in the distance, there's a dragon. You might as well go after the dragon. Go after the dragon. You might as well go after the dragon. Go after the dragon. And the dragon is puffing out fire and smoke. Fire and smoke. Fire, fire and smoke. And every time it puffs out fire and smoke, it turns into these dwarfs. Big problem, right? Just like the problem of the Hydra in Greek mythology. Cut off one head, 7 more appear. What are you going to do about these dwarfs? Kill one. Big deal. 10 more are coming. What can you do about that? In a legal trial, that would have been an inadmissible question. That's called leading the witness. Because what I told him was, despite the horror of this situation, you maybe could do something about it. And he said, I'd take my sword, I'd get my dad. That's a good idea, right? There's the real dad, and then there's the tradition dad, right? You might as well have your father by your side if you're going to go into battle. I'd take my sword, I'd get my dad, I'd go to where the dragon was. I'd jump up on his head, I'd poke both of his eyes out with the sword, I'd go down his throat to the place where the fire comes out, I'd cut a piece of that box out, and I'd use it as a shield. Wow! That's unbelievable! Unbelievable that he could do that. Perfect, right? There's no sense going after the dwarves, because thousands of them. You might as well go after the dragon. Go after the dragon. You might as well go after the dragon. Go after the dragon. What happens if you go after the dragon? You get a piece of it. Piece of its center nature. A piece that can defend you against anything, including other dragons. What if this was the case, evolutionarily speaking or religiously speaking? What if we were adapted to the world? What if it's not the simple place of dead objects that we think it is? What if it's something a lot more alive, a lot more like a story? What if the story is something like this? You have absolutely everything you need, but you have to use all of it. If you run away from any of it, you don't get that piece of the dragon. If you miss even one piece, there's a chink in your armor. There's a place where you're vulnerable. If you make even one mistake, you lessen yourself. If you lessen yourself, you're going to run away more. Not only that, when someone wants to lean on you, they're not going to be able to lean on you because you'll just fall over. What if it was the case that we were adapted to the world, really adapted to it, so that if we made full use of all the talents we had, we'd be okay? What if it was the case that if we set out consciously to never run away from something we know we shouldn't run away from, that everything would be all right? Well, you can think whatever you want to think, but this is what I think. I think it's bloody amazing that that little kid's book had all that information in it. And so you might ask yourself, if that information isn't true, how the hell did it get there? That's it. You might as well go after the dragon. Go after the dragon.